Hi everyone, I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Stephen Altair. Welcome, Stephen.
Oh, David, Sophia, it is wonderful to be with you. It
I'm,
is a real joy.
I'm so excited to have you here today and
Me
talk
too.
about all kinds of things. So, Stephen is actually a multifaceted teacher and a coach. And he is a mystic who bridges ancient spiritual traditions and wisdom with science. So he has 30 plus years of experience doing this, and he's going to bring us down all kinds of rabbit holes. And
A lot of them. A lot of
I'm so excited.
infinite rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you think we should start?
Well, you could start right at the beginning, birth and pre-birth.
Okay.
So that's always a good, an interesting angle for everybody who's listening. Anybody who has had a past life, anybody who comes or has connections with other dimensionals or higher dimensionals, extraterrestrials, angels, will understand where I go when I talk about this. Because I was actually, I died in 1959, according to the Dalai Lama. And I died at a monastery in Tibet called Samye Monastery. And I was reborn again 2 years later with the cord wrapped around my neck.
Oh, wow.
So I had a near-death experience. So any of you that are listening who have had an NDE will know exactly what I mean, that sometimes helps you to remember directly your past lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I was resuscitated. The doctors and mum said I died and had to be brought back, and fortunately I made it. And I made it with a recollection of that particular past life of dying as a monk, a Tibetan monk in 1959.
Wow.
Because when I was 2, from the age of 2 to 3, I had a recurring dream every single night, and I've done a lot of interviews about this for, dream people, dream train, even spoken to the Dalai Lama directly about this. And that is, I remembered being a Tibetan monk, walking across something with a companion, feeling an enormous amount of pain in my back, dying and falling into the primordial light and sound. So I have a direct recollection of that. I can still remember it now. Somebody just has to prompt me to remember that dream.
Wow.
And I died successively 365 times over the next year, because it happened every night. Every night I would wake up screaming, and my parents thought I had epilepsy. So they took me all over, at that stage in New Zealand, to try and get me tested to see what was wrong. Now, nothing was wrong. I was poked and prodded. In fact, today I still don't like being poked and prodded by the medical profession. I was poked and prodded by doctors, neuroscientists, specialist surgeons, you name it. And they all came up with, no, there's nothing wrong. And in fact, after exactly 1 year, a doctor who I can still remember her kind face, Erin was her name, she just said, look, maybe he's too hot, take his clothes off and he'll be fine. And sure enough, my parents did that, and the dream stopped. That particular dream stopped. And I can remember everything about that. It gave me a great curiosity about what this life actually is, and how can a little kid actually bring through a memory of a past life like that, or even an ancient life, or even an ancient tradition. So I, at the age of 4, so that's 1 year later, out of the blue, I asked my mum to find me a Zen teacher and a Japanese tea ceremony teacher.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea why.
And
I just said,
and no one's ever told you about this. You just
nobody's
knew
told me about this. I
great.
said, I need a Japanese teacher. I need to learn how to do Japanese tea ceremony, and I need to study Zen. And she said, what for? So she did find me that, again, this is a lovely teacher called Keiko, whose face I can remember. She was a traditional Japanese teacher of those arts. So I learnt that at the tender age of 4.
Oh my gosh, 4 years old.
4 years old, yep.
This is incredible.
It was amazing. So all those past life memories come. So if you're listening and you've got those kind of past life connections to Japan, Tibet, or anywhere, or even to a tradition and you're not sure why, then this is that story.
I love that.
I was just I was just in that world, and I also was able to lucid dream from that after the age of 3. I could lucid dream. I could call up any dream and go into it and transform it. So I've been able to do that.
That's
successfully.
incredible. I always wanted to do that.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's like having a whole, when you go to sleep at night, there's 8 hours where you're going to have another adventure. So I studied off lots of dream and sleep yoga teachers like Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, who's well known in that particular tradition. So I was listed as one of the top dream teachers in the world.
Really?
Because I used to run courses on lucid dreaming some years ago, and I don't do it so much now. I'm doing some YouTube videos of my dreams. It's kind of that's fun, and composing music out of dreams. That's been a very recent thing.
I love that idea. That's a great idea.
It's super fun.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then at age 5, I said to my parents, I'm not from here, I'm from another star system. I want to write to NASA and ask them to take me home. So I did. I still got the letter. At the age of 5, I wrote and I said, I'm not from Earth. I'm happy to be here, but I need to go home. Please book me a one-way flight out. I said, my origins are out beyond Alpha Centauri. I don't know how I knew that, but I just named it. They did actually. I've still got all the letters. They wrote back and they said, "Oh, we're so pleased to meet you, but unfortunately we don't have one-way flights and we can't go that far yet. We're still, finding our way to the moon and Mars." And I went, "Oh, okay." So they wrote me, over a number of years, they wrote me some beautiful letters, inviting me to be an astronaut by the time I was 18. So that led me to have a lot of curiosity in areas like astrology and astronomy. So Dad took me at age 5 to the Astronomy Society of New Zealand. So that was really lovely, and I learned a lot about the stars as a little kid. And then at the age of 13, I suddenly woke up one day and I said to Mum, I've got to learn magic. And I went next door to my next door neighbour. I had no idea why. And I just started, it was just a soul connection. Her name was Susie. And I just burst into tears and I said, I've got to learn magic and I think you're the right person. Oh, I can still remember. It still brings me those little tears. She was so sweet. And I had no idea, but she was a priestess or a minister in the Order of Saint Germain. And she was part of the Builders of the Adytum, which is a BOTA, which specialises in tarot and astrology and alchemy and so on and so forth. Really.
That's very cool. And this is way before it got so popular.
This
is way before. Yeah.
I was just 13, and she said, "Look, I've got 2. I'm going to have some water too. That's an ideal, good timing." And she said to me, You're definitely in the right place. She said, I wonder how you knew to come across, but I'm going to give you 2 books. And so she gave me Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, and she gave me The Kabbalion by the 3 Initiates, which is just a fantastic... And both of them were fantastic books. And she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to study. So it's such a good, fond memory. You can imagine, if you're listening, that any time you're feeling lost in life, imagine you had a guide next door. Oh, goodness. Yes. That's what I feel like. I just had this luck of... That's why it's bringing me tears. I had this fantastic luck of having a guide next door who literally took me under a wing and said, okay, sure, here, study these lessons. So from 13 to 15... I painted my own set of tarot cards from scratch.
Way. You did.
Yeah. Goodness. And it was just amazing. I remember, still today I can read tarot so easily because I literally lived it for 2 years when I was just a young teenager. You have an intimate
relationship with it.
Very, very. Mm-hmm. And it was read as it was a guide. It was more a meditation tool in that particular group. And then I also studied Yogananda's Kriya Yoga traditions when I was that young, and I developed this deep interest in astrology. So I studied Vedic astrology, and that then got me interested in everything to do with, communities and where do you go to study worldwide? Where do you go to find out that kind of depth, the mastery that somebody like Yogananda or Saint Germain or the angels could bring? Because ever since I was 0, my mum was really smart when I was just a baby. She put me in the tender care of a spiritual godmother named Mother Kathleen Adamson, who was she was Mother Superior in the Carmelite tradition.
Wow.
So she was my spiritual teacher. And she said simply, it's just very moving because she said to me, Mary's your mother, Mother Mary is your mother, Jesus is your brother, and you've got angels all around you, and you can see them, of course. So I thought, of course you can see them. So I could see angels.
That's beautiful.
And I
Instead of
still
people
see
saying
angels.
that you can't, she was telling you can, so then you could.
Then I could.
That's amazing.
It was just as simple as saying. So I see angels as when I'm talking to people, they'll come on their right or their left, or they'll give me messages or them messages, or they'll appear as particular lights, usually as a person's light or guide. So it's really was very interesting. So when I got to 13 or 15, and I was starting to do all Saint Germain's work, it was very easy. I understood what auric fields were and energy fields and how to work with energy. Right. So I, much to the disappointment of my parents, my dad ran a hospital. He ran a department in the Auckland hospital, and my mum ran the other hospital, the maternity ward. Wow. She ran the Mara hospital, and both of them wanted me to do a medical degree, but instead I went and did naturopathic degree and did all of that sort of thing. So I studied, naturopathy, Chinese acupressure, shiatsu, all of that kind of thing when I was in my early 20s and late teens, and went to university and wanted to manage rock bands. So I said that's where the whole interest in music came from. And Dad said, you should study business if you really want to get a good grasp on the music industry or the natural healing industry. At least you'll have a background, which was right. And so as soon as I could travel, I got my degrees. I got a double degree in education and in business, and then the very first thing I did, give my parents, what are you going to do? Are you going to go and start a business in Japan? I said, no, I'm going to go and study in a monastery in Japan. So I went. That's exactly what I did. I went
started a monastery.
So I studied.
Oh, studied.
Sorry,
okay.
It's my Kiwi accent.
That's okay.
So I went and studied in a monastery in Japan, in a Zen monastery. Now, there's also a backdated history for this too, because unbeknownst to me, when Mum was she was 15, she was sent down to the South Island of New Zealand to keep us safe from the wartime. And she was sitting in an orchard one day, and Mori Tohunga, an elder, came along, a woman, and took Mum's hand and said, I want to tell you about your family. And she said, I haven't got a family. Or she thought the Tohunga meant her immediate family, but she said, no, I'm going to tell you about your children. You'll have 4 children. Absolutely correct. Wow. She said, you're going to have 2 boys and 2 girls. Absolutely correct.
Whoa.
And she said, your eldest son will be very mystical and will have a past life as a monk and will spend a lot of time in monasteries. Now, she was dead scared that if she told me that as a little kid, that I would just leave and go. So she never told me until just before she passed away.
Oh my God.
So here was me going to Japan in my early 20s, deciding I've got to go and study at a monastery. And I didn't know that story. And so I went and studied first at a Zen monastery in Shikoku in Japan. And it was one of those Zen monasteries where you have to sit, you have to kneel up against a wall and keep completely still. And if you move a muscle, they hit you in the back with a rod pretty hard.
Whoa! This is not very compassionate.
Well, for them it was compassionate. They were helping train you to be very, 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 focused.
Right.
So I I did that for about a week. And at the end of a week, I had this dream, like I usually do. My dreams sort of guide me here and there and everywhere. I had this dream of a very famous Japanese master called Kukai. And he said, he said to me, you need to study at a Shingon monastery. Now, I didn't even know what or where the Shingon monastery was. I only knew that I was supposed to study in a Zen monastery. So I told one of the monks, and he went to see the master, the abbot of the monastery. Mm-hmm. And the abbot said, tell me the dream. And so I had to relate it through a translator because he didn't speak any English. And he said, just a moment. He picks up the phone. He calls a Shingon monastery in Koyasan in Japan, which is miles away, in another prefecture. And then he puts down the phone. I didn't know he was calling there. I just heard lots of Japanese. Puts down the phone and he says something in Japanese to the monk. And the monk turns to me and says, you're in the wrong monastery. I was just like, what? He says, the abbot has made arrangements for you to go and study at another monastery. It's Kukai's monastery because of your dream. It's the most famous monastery in Japan. It's Shingon Monastery. It's where the Dalai Lama actually comes and holds, conventions and retreats. So I went and I studied then at a Shingon monastery in Japan. Goodness. So I learned a lot of, deep esoteric secrets about monastics and healing and all of that sort of thing. And by that time, I was being shortlisted for a scholarship to China to go and study Taoism because I was really interested in Taoist monks and Taoist monasteries and the dragon lineages of China. And they shortlisted me down to the last two people and they chose somebody who was already in China. Oh. So I thought to myself, oh, well, I'll just go anyway. I'll go to Tibet, I'll go to China, I'll go to India, I'll go to, wherever, all those places. So from the Shingon monastery, I went and studied in monasteries in Thailand, a very famous monastery called Wat Tamakai. I went to study and then I decided I'd study in Nepal before I went to Tibet and before I went to India. And Mum had always said to me, whatever you do, don't talk to strangers in airports because, you never know, especially in Bangkok, because I was going from Thailand, from Bangkok to Kathmandu. She said, you never know, people carry drugs and they might just, you might get arrested if you do something really silly. Well, I did something really silly. I was in the Bangkok airport, this wandering monk with probably not a lot of sense, and a guy comes up to me out of the blue and just walks straight up to me and says, hi, where are you going next? And I said, I'm going to Kathmandu. He said, so am I. He said, do you have a lot of luggage? And I said, no, just a backpack. And he said, would you carry something for me? I said, sure, no worries. He said, no worries. I said, what is it? And he said, hang on, I'll go get it. So he goes out, comes back, and he brings this ginormous teddy bear, like a teddy bear, massive, this big, like bigger than, basically my size. And he said, could you carry that? Because he said, I haven't got any more room in my luggage, and could you take it as carry-on? I said, well, I can literally carry it on the plane if that's what. Yeah, and he said, yeah, okay, great. That was it, right? So he goes and sits in the plane. I'm sitting in the plane with this giant teddy and stuck with me. And, the air hostesses were really good. They made lots of room, gave me a spare seat beside me. So here's me and the teddy bear sitting there, completely ignoring my mum's advice. And then I get to Kathmandu, and, with the intention that I'm going to go and study at a monastery in Kathmandu, because I'd just come from a monastery in Thailand. And I come out of the plane with this teddy bear. And I meet the guy, because he was up somewhere. I don't know which part of the plane he was on. I presume he was in first class or some other class. And he meets me and he says, thanks for carrying that. He said, come with me. I said, okay, sure. So instead of going through the passport, and to this day my passport does not have a Nepalese stamp, instead of going through the main passport, we go through this VIP doorway, a little doorway, and and as we're going down, there's this fanfare and I'm thinking, what the heck's going on? So I come out, and I come right out on the airport on another private area of a plane, or where there's a private plane, and it's the guy turns to me and he says, "Thanks for carrying that." He said, "Oh, I get moved again because it was so beautiful." He said, "You've actually carried the king's brother's son's teddy bear."
Whoa!
And he said,
"That gives me chills."
Oh, I tell you, it
crazy.
was my introduction to. I must have good karma with Nepal.
I thought there was going to be like some kind of drugs inside the teddy bear. This is a better story.
It's a real beautiful story. And he said, and then I met the king's brother, and the king's brother said, "Look, my brother's the king. Thanks for doing this. What do you want?" He said, "We'll give you anything, give you a key to Nepal." And I said, well, funnily enough, I was going to go and study in some monasteries, but I'm also looking at starting an education institution, when I return to wherever I return. I'd really like to see around all the alternative, really alternative schools in Nepal to see what you're doing with education. So he says, "Yep." He said, "We'll put you up, hotel, chauffeur-driven car, everything."
Whoa!
So I get really looked at. Even to today, I still get this beautiful treatment wherever I go anywhere. It's really, really classic.
Amazing.
So I spent all that time in Nepal. Then I went to the Annapurna range, and so went up to some Tibetan monasteries, studied with the monastics there. It was really fun. That particular story is a really cool one because I just ended up. I tend to do things like I don't think too much. I just trust and just go. So I hiked up by myself, and these steps, boy, when you go up those steps, it's like 2 days straight up, and you have to take it slow because
2 days straight up.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Do you sleep on the stairs?
Yeah, No, they have at the end of one day. They have a place you can stay. And the steps are like about the size of your. They're too big for human steps.
Oh.
So when you're trying to step up the step, it really.
It's like Stairmaster.
Yeah, it's like Stairmaster. It's serious work. Oh my God,
that's crazy.
So anyway, I went up into the Annapurna range, and partway, I think it might have been the first day. I'm hiking by myself, and I meet this group of girls, a group of women. And well, they were in between, girls and women, because they were probably between about 16, 17 to about mid-20s. I said, "Hey, what are you doing up here?" And they said, "Oh, we're the Belgian ballet dance group."
Oh my God!
And I said, "Hey, you want to hike?" So they said, "Yeah." So we did the whole trip together, just hiking around all these places, staying with monks, staying in all these fantastic places. And I'll never forget it. It was just such a beautiful trip because they're such beautiful beings, I had one of the majors I'd done in my education degree was creative dance. So I did a lot. I did Indian dance, did Thai dance, I did all these. In fact, Raquel and I were doing we were looking at some dance today, of all coincidental times, by a very famous Indian teacher, and I learned Indian dance from a very famous Indian teacher.
How fun!
I had a lot of good. So being up there in Nepal, top of the world, then going to these Tibetan, monasteries that were on the Nepalese side, and then I got very sick up there, like a lot of people do when they go to India or Nepal. I drank the water. So did my Belgian ballet friends.
Oh no! And
we all got terribly sick for about an entire week. Yeah. It was not a good thing to do.
Oh my gosh.
And I had a vision of Babaji actually. It's the only time in my life I've had a vision of Babaji. I had over my lifetime. I've been very fortunate. Like when I was 15, I had a vision of Jesus. And what happened? A friend of mine had been playing around with Ouija boards, so she had terrible experiences with, and she and all her friends got involved in it. They must have called up a spirit, and one of them died. These are very young people.
Died.
One of them died. One of them had a car crash. One of them stole all the money from the church and got arrested and put in prison. One of them did an overdose on drugs. And she was the last one of the 5 or 6 in the group. And one night she came around to me and she said, I need help. She said, there's a demon and it's going to possess me and I need help. And I said, I don't really know how to help you, but I can always ask Jesus. I said,
I love it.
I went to sleep that night and I just said, hey, Jesus, I need a bit of help here. This is another one of those beautiful memories. Oh, God, I need some help. I went to sleep in the middle of the night. It's the only time it's happened my entire life. In the middle of the night, I woke up. Jesus was standing there, as clear as you and me, just that clear. And I said, I desperately need help. My friend's possessed. And he said, he didn't. He just cut to the chase. He was a man of few words. A beautiful looking man of few words, and he just said, "Say this 3 times. By the power of Christ, be gone." And he said, say that 3 times.
For you to say or for her to say?
For me to say. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that night, my parents had gone out. I can't remember. They had a charity thing. My mum did lots of charitable work for the Cambodian refugees. So she got a Queen's Medal for looking after the refugees.
Oh, my goodness. That's beautiful.
Yeah, she's such a good soul. So anyway, my dad gone out and my friend came over and she said, I'm desperate. She said, it's in me. And I said, well, okay, I know what to do, even though I didn't really know what to do. I was only 15 and wondering, what the heck am I going to do? And I said, just lie down. So she lay down and then I just put my hands on her and she passed out. She completely passed out. She started to froth at the mouth.
Oh, my.
And then I just said 3 times, by the power of Christ be gone, by the power of Christ be gone, by the power of Christ be gone. And she shook, and then she went deathly still, and all the colour passed out of her body. And David Sophia, I thought I'd killed her because she wasn't breathing. And for about 30 minutes, she was just like that, completely still. So I just stayed. And then after 30, she woke up like this, and she said, "It's gone." She said she just looked at me. Her eyes were clear too. Before her eyes it looked all hazy and awful, but it was gone. And she said, "Thank you." I said, "That's okay."
That's okay.
That's okay. And she went out. And then that night, my parents came home. They went and they said, "Hey, what happened?" I said, "Oh, nothing." And they went off to bed. And then, the middle of the night, there was this huge storm. And I can still, it was so vivid. In the middle of the storm, all the window panes start clattering, like as if they're going to smash. Wow. So I went to the window, pulled up pulled up the shade. There's that demon sitting, the face of that demon, sit right there. And I just said, same thing. I was very calm. I just said, by the power of Christ be gone, by the power. 3 times, and it shrieked, this unearthly shriek, and went. I didn't, it's not destructive. It's just saying, hey, you're no longer required.
It's a great thing, though, because it's a good tool to give our audience, too, right? If we have something going on like that, we want to say, by the power of Christ, be gone 3 times.
3 times.
I love that. Yep. Thank you for offering that tool for
everybody,
too.
The tools they really work. Mm-hmm. And the main thing is, if you're struck, I've done a lot of, possession. I've helped people free themselves from a lot of entities and demons over many, many years, and generally I send those entities back to where they came from, just to say they're no longer needed, right? In a compassionate way. I learned that partly. The Dalai Lama spoke to me about that too. He said, I used to actually expel demons, but he said, then I realised I was expelling them to the West, and he said that was sending them to the US.
Thanks a lot.
So yeah, I said, don't do that.
Don't do that anymore.
So that was the first. That was the one and only time I saw Jesus, and it was very helpful. Some years later, I'll give you another example of the way this can work. Some years later, a friend of mine had got involved with a cult, and they were. I think you can have well-meaning cults and not so well-meaning cults. Absolutely. And they were they were pretty well-meaning, but she got a little bit uneasy about some of their motives, especially about the leader. And so she asked me what to do, and I said, why don't you just leave? You don't have to stay. There's no compulsion to stay. And she said, yeah, but they might not take kindly to it. And I said, no, just say, well, I said, what's your truth? Just live your truth. Right. If you want to stay, stay. If you don't want to stay, just say, look, it's time for me to leave. So they had a big conference with several hundred people in a big place, convention place, and she went up and they had to do some sort of declaration. So she went up and in front of everybody, she said, I want to leave. And the leader stopped everybody and said, why do you want to leave? And she said, look, I just don't feel what's going on here is suitable for me anymore. And he said, have you taken any advice? And she said, yes. And then he said, who from? And then she named me. Oh. And he said, well, clearly that person is not a man of God and he's not a man of Christ. So, we should actually support you and get rid of him. So he got all the people in that convention or conference to bring up whatever spirit or whatever energy, whatever dark or I don't know what sort of energy they brought up. So she got really frightened, and in the middle of that, so she went to the back of the hall, or she went out, I think, and she called me and she said, Stephen, because that was my birth name, because I'm sometimes known as Altair and sometimes as Stephen. She said, Stephen, I got to warn you, this group I told them you had given me the advice and they're sending this something against you, some sort of spell or some sort of, affirmation against you, whatever it was.
Right.
And I said, don't worry, whatever it is. I said, it can't harm me. I said, don't worry. She said, no, it's serious. There's several hundred people here and they're chanting this affirmation to kind of expel you from this group. And I said, okay, sure, I'll let you know. I happened to be just about to get onto a train in Japan at the time. I got on the train, and literally between the station I got on and the next station where it stopped, it was a clear blue day, blue sunny day, and suddenly these dark clouds came overhead and it starts to hail. I mean, I know that does happen. It's happened in Sedona to me before.
Yes.
Or in the middle. So I know that does happen. But it was really dark. And the train driver said, look, I'm going to stop at the station. We're going to be here for a while. I'm sorry. Because they're usually always on time. But he said, this is very like a freak storm. I'll let you out if you want. I'll let anybody out who needs it. So everybody got out of and rushed down the stairs. The other people stayed in the train, and only me was on the platform by myself with all this pelting, energy, and I just looked up at it and I thought, well, that's that energy that they've. I wonder why they did that. So I just said the same thing. This is why I'm saying it can work in a lot of different ways. I just said, by the power of Christ, be gone 3 times, and this is not my energy. You're not needed here. Return to sender. Yeah. And this is a really good tip for anybody. Anytime it's not your energy, just send it home.
Turn it back.
Yeah, send it back. So I did that. And then I was about to get back in the train, and the phone rings again, and it's my friend. And she says, what did you... Because what happened is, as I did that, slowly the clouds dispersed, and then suddenly it was a clear... sunny day again.
I love it.
And then she rang and she said, what are you doing? I said, what do you mean, what am I doing? I said, I'm just about to get on a train. And I said, it's about to leave. And then the train driver closed. So I just stayed on the platform and I was talking to her. And the train takes off and it's a clear sunny sky again. She said, well, whatever you did, that cloud, there's a real dark cloud actually in the conference center.
No way.
Yep. And she said everybody's panicked and they realize that they've done something against a good person, and they're, a lot of people are losing faith in the leader for having suggested that.
Wow.
And that particular group broke up about a couple of months later after all that. It created such a division.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Where was this group?
They were in England.
Okay.
She was Swedish. Yeah, so it was. It was a very. It's quite moving because you realise there are much greater forces at work. We are really protected. We're truly looked after, and there's a lot of powerful ways that we can use those energies. So that was one, and then another. The only I said, this was all spurred on by that experience of Babaji in the Himalayas with the Belgian ballet dance group. I wrote a book about this. It was published, and it was called Cool Diary of a Yogi by it was marketed by Hay House.
Oh.
And the very first review I ever got was by this guy. I got so many fantastic reviews, but the first review I got ever in my whole life gave me 1 star, and he said, this guy's obviously very spiritual, his tales are amazing, but they're either all true or they're all false.
Oh.
And he said, I just can't believe some of these stories. So he said, even if he is a really cool guy, I'm only going to give him 1 star.
Well, that's not very nice. What's wrong with you?
Well, actually, it was kind of, it was a good way. I thought, hey, actually, he's got a funny point. I wonder, Hay House made me change all the names of the people because some of them were quite, I was involved with lots of famous people through Yogananda's group in those very early days, so they made me change it all. And I thought, probably if you read it and you didn't actually know me, you might feel, hey, dispersing demons and mystery, amazing cloud. I've got so many of those stories.
Right, especially in those days. Like maybe it would be more acceptable now because people are more in that, but in those days it was a little bit far.
A little bit freaky, yeah.
Far out, right?
A little bit far out. A little bit far out.
Yeah.
So, and I only had one time that Yogananda came literally into the room in the same way, and that was when I'd done about 5. So from 13 to 18, I did all alchemy and all Kriya Yoga. So sort of the Eastern and the Western path. And then one night, out of the blue, I wake up and there's Yogananda standing there, exactly like Jesus had. And he just said, you need to choose.
Really?
And then he disappeared. Yeah. And I had to choose
between the alchemy
and the yoga. Yeah. So
can I just step back for a second? What was the alchemy that you were doing? Was that the Saint Germain's?
Yeah, Saint Germain's.
Oh, alchemy. So you had to choose between Saint Germain and yoga.
Yogananda at that point.
Wow.
Later I shifted back to doing both quite happily, but at that point I went over to my next door neighbour because she had introduced me to those 2 paths, and I was in tears. I felt so conflicted, and I said, Yogananda came and he said this, and she said, I know. She said, I got a feeling that something was going to happen to you. And she said, so which one are you going to choose? I said, well, at this point I have to choose yoga because I said I'm on that. I want to go and study that, and I'll come back to the alchemy, which I did do. And so she said, okay, yeah, that's fine. You just got to make the choice. Yogananda's told you. So that was how I ended up, coming to the Himalayas and having a vision of Babaji, was because I decided I was going to go and live with some of Yogananda's communities around the world as part of my visiting monasteries path. So I did do that. After I had this vision of Babaji, and Babaji simply said, you are going to, combine, which is true, the science, spirituality, and consciousness.
Okay.
And I was basically
so Babaji told you this.
Babaji told me that.
Wow.
On the top of the Himalayas.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And you didn't have any idea about this before?
I had no idea. That was the strongest vision I had. So I thought,